Phil Santos Pullman says, "Hi, Lorge. How's the baby going? Just read it. Might be my favorite chapter since the start of Wano Act 3. Cheers from Brazil as always." The Saul stuff. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. This was probably. I think this is my. Okay, I like the. It's hard to say. I can't say it's probably my least favorite chapter in One Piece, in a sense, in terms of the Saul reveal. I'd say it's probably my least favorite chapter because before this, my least favorite chapter in One Piece was. No, I guess this wouldn't be my least favorite chapter, would it? Because my least favorite chapter before this was the fake out chapter for Pell's death. So I guess now my least favorite chapter would be the fake out chapter for Saul's death. This was just the chapter that we found out about it. So I can't blame the chapter because the rest of the chapter was really cool, exciting stuff. It did get me like, you know, I think that the chapter was really, really exciting to read overall. It's just that um, I think the reveal of Saul being alive that just takes away so much. And it's not like, you know, um, I think it's not something that I want to talk. I'm not going to bitch too much about it on this stream because the reality is that this is probably something that is better saved for a video. I'll talk about it in next Tuesday's video. I think I'll talk about it in next Tuesday's video. Wait till you find out Pedro survived. Yeah, I think it's just not something like. I understand if everybody enjoyed the chapter, but my thoughts, I guess, on everything with Saul surviving, like it's definitely something that's best saved for me giving a full structured video on because it goes off on a lot of things that okay, I think part of it is that I think that the reason that I dislike fake out deaths versus other people dislike fake out deaths are different. So for a lot of people it's like a lot of people are happy that Saul's alive because they like Saul as a character, so it's fun that he's back. And a lot of people are like, well, it's Ice Time Capsule, right? It's called Time Capsule, therefore it's fine that he's alive. My issue is not that Oda, like, I'm not talking about some plot inconsistency here. Cool. It was called Time Capsule. I mean, there have been little side theories or whatever popping up once every few years or whatever, like, hey, what if Saul's actually alive because it's called Time Capsule and stuff? Sure. That's, like, it's not the craziest thing that Oda is saying, like, Saul's alive because we get it. Yeah, Aokiji saved his friend. The move was a move named after something that suggests, persevering through the future, right? That's not the that's not the issue for me. For me personally, it's more so just I think that we lost a great tragic story in One Piece. I think Saul's story was, and I'll leave it at that for now. I'm really not going to expand on it further than that in this stream because it is something pretty lengthy that I want to give my thoughts on. And the type of deaths that I personally, because like there's a lot of fake out deaths that really bother a lot of people that don't bother me that much in One Piece. But then there's certain ones like Pell, like Saul, like Pound that really, really do bother me because it's in terms of what's being lost. So I think we just lost for me. Like keep in mind Robin's backstory, the whole thing from start to finish for me. That's my favorite backstory in One Piece, and it's probably like that's my go-to sad thing if I want to read something really, really sad. Like Robin's backstory, really, really from start to finish, I consider it a masterpiece. I love reading that shit. At this point, I can't say I would ever go back and reread Robin's backstory. Why would I when the climax is basically just a lie? I don't know. Like the emotions that I feel from Saul's death, I'm never gonna feel that again rereading that scene. That's just the reality of it. Because I know it's not actually happening. It's like I can't go back and reread Pell's shit and be like, oh, this is so sad, because it's not a real thing that's happening. So for me, it's more so what was lost here. And for me personally, if other people don't care that much, that's perfect. I'm not trying to say this is like a really terrible series ruining thing. I'm saying for me personally, um, I'm never gonna go back and reread that backstory. Basically, obviously, when I'm reading One Piece in general, I'll be reading that backstory. But I feel like I don't know, man. I don't know if you guys get where I'm coming from, but that's just can't really. I'm sorry to kill the hype over it, but that's me. That's just me. J.K. Kane says Rosenite coming back at this point. What? What? Muhammad D. Luffy, welcome to the Yonko. Sheriff Laffy says Bellamy might be in Arlong's dungeon for real now. Maybe. GDN says Oda only kills characters in flashbacks. Not even. Ha ha ha. Yeah. Yeah. You know. OG Stampico Juice says it's still sad even if he didn't die, but it's not as sad. Like, what do you want me to? It's just no matter how you spin it, it's not as sad. I can read like Saul's death was the capper of Robin's backstory, right? It's imagine it. It's building. First, the island's on fire. Then Clover goes down. Then Robin loses her mom, right? Then the innocent civilian ship goes down. Everything's in flames, and then finally, Robin loses her only friend, right? And he dies laughing, giving her this last message, etc. That's the crescendo. That's the climax of Robin's backstory. So to me, that's the most important part of Robin's backstory, for me personally. Again, it's just like when I read Pell's chapter, I don't find it sad anymore. When I go back and read that chapter, and I actually did after this, it's just, what am I supposed to feel there, you know? So for me personally, what was lost for me personally after this reveal is just like, I don't know. Again, I'm not saying Oda didn't plant an out. He did. Said ice time capsule. Just like I always believed that he wouldn't actually go through with that and then take away what happened with Saul. It's fine if you guys disagree. I'm explaining to you how I feel. Yeah, you guys don't have to care. It's fine. I am going to put out a video explaining why I feel the way I do, but, you know, Soldier and Express, because that is something, like, I didn't, like, no, I did, like, it's a recurring thing, right? So, Pound, Pell, now Saul. Like, I could have put out a video on this sort of stuff when Pound, the stuff came out, but I was just like, no, it's not worth it. At this point, because it's something that I do really, like, it is something that I do really, really care about, which is, like, again, Robin's backstory for me is, like, it's honestly, it was, like, it's, like, the saddest section for me in the entire story. Like, Oda's so good at backstories. For me, personally, Robin's was always my favorite. So for me, that part of the story has a very special place in my heart. So for me, this is just something where I feel like I gotta put out a video on it, or at least how I feel about it, or why I personally didn't like it. And if you guys don't want to watch that video, you don't have to watch that video. Or you can watch it and then, you know, give your own points and stuff on it. But, you know. Jank Tank says, Morj, while I get what you're saying, do you think Saul being alive invalidates the choice he made in that chapter and the impact it had on Robin? That's the thing. It's a situation where you could say technically it doesn't, right? Because the effect is the same, right? The effect is the same, which is that Robin's left with a good message. Saul's making a sacrifice. The effect is the same. But this is something I'll elaborate on in the upcoming video, which is just that I'm not talking about technically here, right? I'm talking about what actually makes a story a tragic story. Because what we're getting here is basically Oda having his cake and eating it too, right? So it's like, imagine how tragic it would be if all this happened and, like, Saul's final words were this, and Robin loses her only friend, and he leaves. I shouldn't even elaborate here. You guys get what I'm saying, I think, to a degree, but I do want to articulate it a little better in a full video scripted format. But to me, I'll just say, you can now no longer call the story of Saul and Robin a tragic story. Like, it's just not a tragedy anymore, right? It's gone. We were led to believe something, but the reality is that it was more so an idea than an actual final endpoint for this character, right? We got the idea of, like, well, what if there was this crazy, beautiful sacrifice and final last words and message? What if that was the case or something? But nah, they're fine. He's fine. She'll get her friends or whatever, and she'll probably even see him again some other day, right? It's no longer a tragedy, right? You had the idea of a tragedy there, but it's no longer a tragedy. And there's some other examples I'll use throughout the story, I think, in the upcoming video that'll help articulate what I mean there more. Because I think we can go around in circles all day discussing this singular example, but I think if I pull more examples of what I'm talking about here, I think what I'm trying to get across will make more sense. JCB says, didn't Robin get completely frozen and didn't die? Yeah, maybe he didn't even have, maybe Aokiji didn't have to say a time capsule or whatever. Maybe we could have just assumed that Saul would have been fine anyway. Journal X rants his fam, it's still a tragedy, LMAO, are you high? I'm not talking about the whole incident of O'Hara. The whole incident of O'Hara is, of course, still a tragedy. I'm talking about the story of Saul and Robin, right? Because that's a story within a story. The dynamic that those two characters had, and essentially the character storyline of Saul, it's no longer a tragic storyline. At least not in the way that it was before. You had to go into hiding, I guess. Wrench, I think people aren't getting it. Yeah, I get it. There were sad moments in... Yes, the incident of O'Hara is still very, very sad. but I'm talking going back and reading it as a story, right? So if I'm reading it as a story, the climax of that story, right? The climax of that story is Saul's death. It's a buildup, right? We're getting introduced to Robin, learning about how bad her life, etc., is on this island. Then slowly we're getting this spiral of, okay, something really, really bad is going to happen. At the same time, she's meeting this character, befriending this character. He's becoming the only person that she can connect to in this world, the only friend that she has. He's teaching her these lessons, etc. And then this spirals into this terrible turn of events where all of this shit's happening again. Island burning down. She loses Clover. She loses her mom, who she just met. Extremely sad, right? All of the people that she knew, people of O'Hara, innocent people, all of them murdered in front of her. And then the climax is losing Saul, right? That is what it all builds up to. So yes, I can read Robin's backstory and feel very sad for the vast majority of it, but the ending matters quite a bit. So once I get to the end, it's like beautiful, tragic, sad, 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 sad. Oh, Pell. Oh, we get a Pell chapter to round it out. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, you guys, if it's still very sad for you guys, that's great. I'm saying for me, I can't read that backstory again and be like, ever hit the same way reading it from start to finish. I just can't. I'm surprised if other people can, because for me, it's the same thing as. I mean, do you guys feel sad when you go back and read Pell's chapter? Because I personally don't. Do you guys feel sad when you go back and read Pound's chapter? Because I personally don't. So for me, I don't understand why would reading Saul's chapter ever make me sad again? Because now it's the same as those other chapters. And it just hurts because it's the climax, and I thought it was a brilliant, honestly perfect climax to this terrible series of events that was just building and building and building over the course of Robin's backstory. If you still feel sad over Saul's death, then I envy you in a way because you still get to hold on to that. I don't know how, but for me, how could I read that and feel anything? I just don't know. LD Sparaten says, imagine Ace, Bellamere, Quina, Tom, Hero Look being alive. I mean, what people are going to say is that, well, this one's technically fine because it's the ice time capsule, etc. And that's just not the point to me. The point is not whether or not technically there is a reason that this character was able to survive. The point for me more so is just what is being removed from the story, and you're removing a tragedy from the story. And it was something that really hit hard and stuck with me. So I'm just sad to see it gone. Hybrid says, do you think Vegapunk is an... See, this is the thing. English 1D1 says it's still a tragic story, but it's given a solid happy ending. So what you just described is essentially not a tragedy. That is not what we call a tragic story. Once it's given a solid happy ending, the tragedy is gone. The solid happy ending that I personally thought was beautiful to me was Robin never getting to see Saul again, but Saul's message living on, his will living on through her, the idea of what he was passing on living on to her clinging to that for years and years and years, till finally it did come true. She can never see Saul again. Saul is gone. She's lost that permanently. That is tragedy, right? But she finds something new through what he taught her. She finds friends that are not going to leave her, right? She finds the Straw Hats. That's the beauty of that whole storyline to me. I just don't think it works. To me, again, it's this phrase, have your cake and eat it too. You're no longer writing a tragedy and then bringing it full circle to something beautiful, right? It's a fake out, and then Robin also gets this happy ending here, and then she also gets catharsis knowing Saul's fine here. It's no longer, I just don't know how it would be, it's just not emotionally affecting to me anymore. Otter says, for me, this adds more than it takes. Yeah, I mean, that's fine. If you prefer it this way, then, like, a lot of people probably are happier that Saul is alive. So, I personally just prefer the tragedy of his death staying in the story. That's just it. For me, again, I've said it many, many times, but for me, again, that's something that was always, like, very hard-hitting and very special to me. So I prefer that the tragedy stay. Eric, I mean, you're coming in late. You're saying the genocide of the people, not sad. You guys aren't getting it. Yes, you can have multiple sad things. I'm saying the way I view that whole story now, right? This is sad, that's sad, that's sad. A lot of it's building to the most personal moment of tragedy, which is her losing Saul, right? So obviously everything that happened in Ohara is still very sad, but it's just weird to me now reading a series of tragic events where the climax of it, again, that's what I'll keep repeating. The climax of it, the climax of that story is a Pell chapter, right? The climax of the story is basically a lie. That's what it hurts. How it finishes matters a lot to me, right? So, I mean, you're arguing in the technical sense. I'm just talking about how I'm experiencing a story, right? It's an emotional thing. It's not a technical thing. I know that the ship of civilians dying is very sad. But what if I told you that the moment that the ship of civilians died is not as sad to me as that moment that Saul died? Because just the way storytelling works, it's usually based, for most people, on watching characters build a sort of connection, right? Getting somewhat invested in that emotional connection between those characters, and then seeing a character lose that bond, or lose that relationship, right? So, I mean, I'm personally, yeah, I'm sadder when Bellamere dies than when that ship of Oharans dies, right? I'm sadder when Hiruluk dies than when that ship of Oharans dies. I'm sadder when Ovia dies than when that ship of Oharans dies, right? So, yes, you're right. Technically, sad things did happen in Ohara, and Clover's death is still sad to me. Ovia's death is still sad to me. I'm just explaining the way I'm reading that whole backstory when it's sad, 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 and it's building, and then it leads to the final, what was initially the most powerful, most poignant moment, Saul's death, when when the landing of that backstory, that's a big fake out, that's a lie, that now completely rings hollow. It's like, it's no long, it makes the whole story less powerful for me. It makes the whole story something that I'm not as interested in revisiting. Because even if I do revisit it, what do I do now? Do I read everything and then skip the Saul chapter? That just doesn't make sense, you know? Sheriff Lafitte says Saul being alive also takes away from the narrative weight and symbolism of dying with a smile and laugh, which is so essential to the D-Clan. That's a really, really, really important point. And that's going in the script. Jolly D. Joestar says Clover's death was more of a cool lore drop of what's world government hiding. Ovia sadness was their goodbye. Yeah, Ovia sad. Like I don't want to underrate any other part of the backstory. I'm not saying that other parts of the backstory weren't sad, because for me, one of the saddest moments in One Piece period is Robin asking, "Are you my mother? I've always wanted to hold your hand." That is really still fucking sad for me. 100%. 100,000%. But also, let's talk about this. It's entirely fucking possible that Ovia is alive, right? Did we see Ovia dead? Is it not entirely, like, Saul we saw frozen. The only reason that we thought he might still be alive is because it was called Ice Time Capsule. But as far as I know with Ovia, we didn't even see a body or anything, right? That's another thought. I'm gonna try not to think about that. But yeah, I'm beating a dead horse at this point. But you guys understand, for me, it's basically the story can be really good overall, but the way it finishes matters a lot to me personally. So if the climax is kind of suddenly ringing extremely hollow, it just doesn't work for me as much personally.